Okay, welcome listeners to another episode of Roll or Die. You are in for a treat today because we have one of the forefathers, one of the founding fathers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Australia. Also my first coach, awarded me my blue and purple belts, Mr. Peter DeBean. Thanks for joining us.
Hello guys, how are you going?
Going really well, mate. How you been? What's life like down on the surf coast at this time of year with all these COVID-y things happening?
Yeah, there's a lot of infections at the moment because a lot of the people on holidays are going crazy. Torquay's probably about as infectious you can get, but maybe that's a good thing. Once everyone gets infected, I think we'll probably be okay. I hope.
Yeah, that's it. Now it's been a big week for you as well, Pete. You awarded Kobe, your daughter, her purple belt this week.
No, she's had purple for a while.
Oh, has she? Oh, I don't know. It just sort of came up on my social media. So you've got, for any listeners that don't know, your son Max is a black belt and Kobe's purple belt. So tell us a little bit about that, what it's like being a father and a coach to two pretty high-level athletes.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Max is actually leaving tomorrow morning back to New York. So he's been in New York on and off for 2 years now, but came back to have shoulder surgery. And he's had that and everything and done all the rehab. So he's going back tomorrow. So that's pretty exciting.
Is that because the Australian medical system is so much better? Oh, I'm cutting you. Is that because the Australian medical system?
Anton?
Is that because the Australian medical system is so much better, or?
We've got a good surgeon here that we like to use, and he looks after us. And I think the quote Max had in New York was $50K for the shoulder operation. So said better to come back, even though it's all locked down and everything. Come back and we'll get the rehab done because we've got good rehab people here as well. So that's his last strength conditioning session yesterday. They said he's like 95% plus, so that should be pretty good.
Wow.
So what happened? What happened to Max?
He had a near circumferential labrum tear, so like nearly all the way around, sort of thing.
Wow.
So he was still competing with it, even under instructions not to. And eventually, I think the last one he competed was the Atlanta Open. So, and then decided to come back, miss the rest of the year, and get that fixed up, ready for this year. So he'll be fighting in Rome in the Europeans in February. So that'll be his first one.
Wow.
Yeah. That's obviously he doesn't have his dad's shoulder physique and arm physique, because the first thing that I notice about you whenever I see you is like there's shoulders and arms coming at me. You know, it's like there's something about you, mate. It's just like you are all arms.
I think over a few years, Anton, it just keeps adding on. So I have an advantage because I'm older, I guess. But Max,
do you have to inject something to have arms this big, or is it like do you just do a lot of weight?
No, I do a lot of chin-ups.
Right.
And as you know, chin-ups are probably, people say it's good for your back and everything, but you know the arms don't get away doing nothing with chin-ups. So
yeah, right.
You know, I never really get a sore back from doing chin-ups. I have to stop when my arms get sore.
Yeah, wow.
So it's more of an arm workout and shoulder workout than what people think, I reckon. So maybe that's what it is. I've been doing it for years.
Pete, what does your strength and conditioning workout look like? What's an average kind of week for you? What would you do besides jiu-jitsu?
I'm a real indoor rower ergo fanatic. I love that. So I hit that pretty hard. And I find that that's probably the closest bit of fitness machinery that you can get to, to be equal to jiu-jitsu.
So like
legs and the arms, and everything's sort of going. So, stationary bike and running and all those things are all okay, but I find that the ergo is probably the best for jiu-jitsu. So I do a lot of that. And then my chins and push-ups, I do a lot of those. Not really lift any weights.
You've just
Really, you don't lift weights at all?
No, actually, Max and Kobe gave me a 20-kilo weight vest. So I've been actually doing chins with that. So that is kind of weights, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, but not a bar, not a dumbbell,
No,
not the
really.
traditional. Really?
No, because I find that probably the nervous system is not really. It's almost working against jiu-jitsu by doing weights like that.
Okay.
I mean, if you have to put on weight, dramatic weight, you'd probably go and lift weights. But I think weights can be a bit detrimental to jiu-jitsu. I think body weight exercises are a far better way to go.
Interesting.
And also for injury prevention, you don't think it matters to not do weight training?
I think you've got most going to get more injured doing weight training with weights. I think if you're doing, like for example, if we talk about chins, you're going to be working for ancillary muscles that it's hard to mimic in the gym. So most people go bench press, squats, deadlifts, and that's all okay. But it's all the little angles and that you don't get covered by doing weights that you can get covered by doing body weight exercises. And also I believe that the best possible strength for jiu-jitsu is a strength to weight ratio. So rather than have absolute strength, which is, you talk to most people, say, what do you bench? And you go, so they're all talking about doing an absolute weight, whereas I'm more into relative strength rather than absolute strength. So I think if you can be as strong as you can for your weight, that's probably the best thing for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. What would you like? You've done this for a long time, obviously. You can just tell by your body. Like, I can ask how old you are. How old are you?
I turned 60 last September.
Yeah, you look amazing, man. So, you must be in a great routine, and then to be like, do you go through waves where you get demotivated and you stop, or have you managed to maintain a routine? And if you have maintained a routine, how do you stay motivated?
I'm a real self-trainer. When I talk about ancillary training, I'm a real self-trainer. A lot of people say, "Oh, let's go do this together and we'll motivate each other," but I find I do worse in those conditions. So I'm very good self-motivation, and I set goals and PBs for myself, and I try to achieve that myself. So I'm always working to better myself from within rather than externally looking at what other people are doing.
I love that.
I've got PBs in perhaps like, let's say 50 plus chin-up drills where I know all the times and everything, and I might go from one to the other, and after 3 or 4 weeks, when I get if and when I get a PB, I'll shift back to something else 3 or 4 weeks, and then try and get a PB in that, and shift back to something else. So in my head, I'm already know what I need to achieve.
Yeah, amazing.
So these lockdowns of the last 2 years haven't really affected your training that much?
No, not me, no.
That's great.
I've got my rower in my lounge room.
Wow.
So I have to walk around my rower to get to the TV, so it's always there. So it's so a bit of a love-hate relationship, but yeah, it's in my lounge room, so it doesn't worry me too much.
What does he want about that? Is she like, get this rower out of here?
It's a real love-hate thing, the rower.
Yeah.
And so, Pete, it'd be doing a disservice to our listeners not to ask your story, like your beginning of jiu-jitsu and how you discovered it. I mean, there is the argument or the story that you've brought jiu-jitsu to Australia, and then there's also, on the other hand, I guess there's a theory that John Will did it. So what's your background of it? How did it start for you?
I was training with John Will started off doing Salat, and then it changed into shoot boxing and then shoot fighting. And then at that time, I traveled to Brazil, 1990 would have been, with John.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we just saw different things. In looking back now, I think he saw some things, opportunities that he could bring some techniques into his shoot fighting. Whereas I just thought to myself, I'm never throwing a punch. I'm never doing anything ever again. I'm doing this. So, so he didn't go back to Brazil after that. He was sort of started going to the US. I kept on. There was a couple of incidents in Brazil when we were there, and I wasn't treated the best in the first few years. I think like by 1990, I was sort of like getting looked after there, and that's when you need to stop doing your shoot fighting. You need to go and just do jiu-jitsu. And I said, well, there's no one in Australia doing jiu-jitsu. And he said, that's why you have to start it. So I started teaching in my garage at Torquay, and that became Australia's first jiu-jitsu academy. And it grew and grew. We went to Melbourne in 1996 because there was people coming down from Melbourne to train. To Torquay Academy's been going all that time. And then I think in about 1998, John Will said, well, we're doing jiu-jitsu too now. And I said, yeah, it's okay. But there was people doing it for the time that he was labelling himself as jiu-jitsu.
This is amazing.
So
you're telling me this is amazing that jiu-jitsu in Australia originated in Torquay, Victoria, of all places. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's different, isn't it? And it was just the way it sort of panned out, I guess. If I never went to Brazil in '90 with John Will, it may not have happened. But as you know, things happen, and then they sort of morph and change. You're not sure how you couldn't have predicted how it's going to change. It just changes.
Yeah.
And then Carlos said, you need to create a federation. So in '94, so when I got back in 1994 October, we incorporated the AFBJJ. Mm-hmm. So that was the first federation outside of Brazil. So Australia was actually, there was no federation in the US at that time.
Oh, wow.
Australia, yeah. Wow. So the AFBJJ has been around for quite a long time.
Yeah, it sure has.
October 4.
What's
coming up? What's that?
What's been your experience of having the federation, setting up the federation, having the federation? Like, I know that it's a big responsibility. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of opinions. Like, I get that it's good and bad. I get it's so much. Like, it's the whole scene. What is your relationship with that whole project? Talk a bit about that.
Well, I'm the president.
Yeah.
And we have a management committee. But basically, and I think in hindsight it has worked out all right. There's been a lot of people over the years saying, we need to have, an open forum, and we need to have, people on there and different presidents. But what happens, I really just always take my lead from Carlos and the IBJJF. And I think no one's going to say that the IBJJF haven't done a wonderful job for jiu-jitsu worldwide. And I would like to think the AFBJJ has done a similar role in Australia.
Yeah.
Kept jiu-jitsu growing, and if you look now, I think we've got 42 competitions listed this year for 2022. Yeah. And they all run nicely. It's got the ranking system. I think it's been a success. And if it hadn't been sort of diluted and argued and fought about, I think it could have been a really big mess.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Enemies out there, it's not in here. It's like that's the thing. Like, we don't want infighting. We want to just focus on putting on great events and having great rule sets that protect people. This is what I imagine goes on, right? But if there's too many people arguing, then things just get slowed down and stopped and bogged down and all of that sort of stuff.
And so the best interests of jiu-jitsu in Australia, I think, and probably people say it's not true, but I think we've actually catered for the best interests of jiu-jitsu in Australia. And I think that where jiu-jitsu is in Australia at the moment is probably due, not to, but to the AFBJJ in a lot of ways. And I think by having that from the very early beginnings and monitoring it, and we've had issues, as you know, Anton, there's always little issues to overcome, but I think it's put Australia in a good place worldwide.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah.
And Pete, going back to what you were saying about your early days, you sort of glossed over. Could you expand on some of those things that that happened that you said were not very nice? Was that as a non-Brazilian in Brazil on the mats, or was that off the mats, or what?
Yeah, well, I didn't see any non-Brazilians coming to Brazil until probably 96, one or two, and maybe 97 and a few more. So probably from 1990 to 1996, I never saw another non-Brazilian training there. And I don't believe there were any there. We could sort of hear about it. So at first, it was funny to see that development at that time. Looking back now, it's very interesting because they were very unprotective of their sport, but at the same time, they were very proud of it and very protective in the same way, in a different way. So it was like, we like this guy. This guy's okay, and it was a bit of them trying to prove in the early days that they were good at their sport and it's their sport, and you are an outsider. And then sort of eventually started to say, no, he's okay, and things were changing. So jiu-jitsu was very, very different in those days. Very different.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I've just finished reading that Gracie book and the Breathe book, and it's just amazing. It kind of gave me so much insight. But I really get that in the start, it was not a fun sport. It was a full-on self-defense and all the Bellatudo stuff and everything else. Like it really was a kind of a sink or swim environment. And that actually brings me to Kim often reflects on like training in your gym and how like she's an absolute killer, right? But the thing is, she talks about how in your club, there's not so much focus on technique. It's a lot of rolling. It's a lot of like live training. And is that something that you got from being over there? Is that like the culture of your club, and is it still that way?
Yep. And we probably still do things pretty similar. Pretty similar. Might have changed a little bit, but not too much. I remember when Podger Gracie, who's a good friend of mine, he was one of the instrumental in Brazil when I was starting there. He was like 14, 15, and so I've known him for quite a while. He was saying to me that he got a question at one of his seminars, and it said, what do you get drilling? And he said, drilling? What do you mean drilling? He goes, the guy, drilling. And he goes, I drill when I train.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And if you think that's what training is.
Yeah.
You might say, I want to work on my my butterfly guard, for the next couple of weeks. You're actually drilling your butterfly training. The idea of people pairing up and going through like a fictitious drill session with no resistance or anything is not really part of what I was brought up with.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not what I do.
You know what?
I need to actually feel the result.
Yeah, I drill when I train. That's an amazing quote.
Yeah. And he almost made it sound like he was confused, but I think he knew what the guy was talking about. But he made it seem like he was confused. Drilling? Do you mean training? Drilling? I'm not sure. What do you mean? It was a bit like that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
A lot of people do drilling now, and they say, I want this, do it 100 times and do this 100 times. And you go, but there's no resistance. It's never going to happen that way.
Yeah. And Pete, Anton mentioned too about self-defense. So I guess, and you talked about the inception and the AFBJJ and the IBJJF. So I guess there is a little bit more sport focused. How do you see jiu-jitsu kind of marrying up between like the origins of the self-defense versus it being for a sport?
I can't say I ever did self-defense, Kim, to be honest.
No. So you of the opinion, like it started kind of as a self-defense thing, and then it still has that, but you don't really think that's necessary now in training that side of things, or what are your thoughts around the self-defense side?
Yeah, I think self-defense is great because competition is probably only for 5 or 10% of us. You know, people say, oh, you know, everyone competes, but not everyone competes. Worldwide, there'd be, if there was more than 20% of people who jiu-jitsu who competed, I'd be shocked. So most people don't compete. So they're doing it for whatever reasons they want to do it for. And then the people who will take it to the next level will compete. And competition is good because, you know, it teaches us to get out of our comfort zone, as you know. And not only that, it'll show us techniques that we have been doing in training. They may not work in competition under severe pressure. That's one of the reasons why I'm not too much into drilling, because when people compete, there's no drilling going on. So I think that the competition is very important for, you know, letting us see what works and does not work, or how we need to fix things. I think that with the with jiu-jitsu, it's always evolving technically. And a lot of people might think this is it, this is the new jiu-jitsu, and you go, oh, this, you know, mate, there's no new jiu-jitsu. A little slant that might change a little bit, and then it might go away and come back. I remember there was a friend of mine, Roberto Magalhaes, his nickname is Holeta, and I think he won the absolute black belt in 97. I could be wrong. World Championships, 97, 98. So it is a long time ago. But anyway, he would just beat everyone in the academy, and he obviously beat everyone at the competition. And he had the inverted guard that no one could ever do anything with. Shorter torso, longer legs, about 6'2". He's living in London, teaching in London now. But he would invert, and he would just, no one could do anything about it. He'd just come underneath, invert, and over they go on the biggest people. Until someone, I think it might have been the year after he won in the absolute final, when he was inverting, just went bang, and toe hold foot locked him.
So he had all the current fashionable stuff back in 97.
You know, that's the end of the inverted guard. It's finished, you know. But then, you know, as you know, it's come back a bit again, and it'll disappear again. And, you know, footlocks were really big a little while ago. I think they've dropped off a little bit. It seems like 50-50, and Berimbolo has had its day for the time being and is going on a bit of a wane now. But that doesn't mean it can't come back again. So you have to be aware, and I suppose I have the advantage of being involved for quite a long time, that I've seen those things come and go in popularity. So therefore I know what to expect a little bit more in the future than what someone who's just started would. But someone just starting jiu-jitsu at a particular time, if they weren't spoken to correctly, they could believe that was jiu-jitsu, and then get a little bit shocked when it starts to change a bit.
That's a great point. So people in jiu-jitsu should be aware that in their time, if they stick around for long enough, it's going to go through fashionable cycles, and they need to move with the times or get left behind.
And it was probably in the I think 2019, John Mill Taylor, he won the featherweight world championships, black belt, and he just sort of went down, took people down, smashed past, and won.
Right.
And everyone was, Berimbolo 50-50's finished. But then this year he lost. So he's sort of going to go, it's hard to say, you know, but that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. There's so many facets to it that it's very, it's just enthralling, because anything can happen. So it's very exciting.
And you've got your, you're in front of your competition hall behind you, I guess. So your team is certainly very successful competitors by the look of it. Would you sort of have any advice for people that maybe are not competing? Like you mentioned, it's probably 80% of people doing jiu-jitsu don't compete much, who maybe struggle sometimes with motivation, because it sounds like you don't have any issues with your motivation. What advice would you give to people who, you know, we ebb and flow? I've been doing it for 12 years, so I know there's times when it's hard to sort of, but you put one foot in front of the other, you pack your bag, you get to training, and then you feel better. But any advice for people that maybe can't even get to training, that struggle with motivation?
that's interesting. I haven't really thought about that before. But I think because I think one of the reasons why I'm sort of always motivated is because maybe when I was born, I'm not sure, but doesn't matter what I do, I always want to try and improve myself. So when I get tradesmen around the house doing things, I can annoy the hell out of them, because if it's a spark up there, I'll be there going, well, why are you doing this while here? Because I'm always trying to learn and think, I've had Sparky say, can you just let me do my job? And you go, oh, okay, sorry about that. So I like to get involved and to learn things and better myself. So that's where I get my motivation from. But people who don't have that, probably competing would be good, because what they can do is they can actually get external recognition for what they're doing. And therefore that can carry them along a bit as well. So some people will need competition to keep them motivated, and others don't.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I've got a question. We've never asked it of a guest, but it just came to me. And that is, someone who's been around as long as you, and especially with jiu-jitsu's reputation in the beginning, because it wasn't just a sport, have you ever actually had to use jiu-jitsu in a fight? Have you ever been, I've never actually been in a street fight. I've been beaten up a couple of times when I was younger, but I have not actually been in a fight since I've had jiu-jitsu skills. And I reckon I could talk my way out of any situation. But have you ever actually had to use jiu-jitsu? Yeah,
I have. So it's very simple, because it's almost like watching something happen in slow motion.
Right.
Most people are, in a fight, they get very stressed, very adrenaline everywhere. So they're just doing stupid things. So and competition might help that, Kim, as well, to remain a little bit calmer. But yeah, the situations that I've been in I don't know if you had one down here in the alleyway, Kim. Maybe you remember. I know Paul Lay that time. Do you remember?
No, tell us. Can you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, it wasn't a very good incident, but anyway, we were coming back from a coffee, and someone was in the back of Paul's car trying to steal Paul's car.
Wow.
So he jumped in through the back window, because it was a wagon, SUV, jumped in the back and tried to grab the guy who was in the front, who was trying to hotwire it. And then the guy turned around with the screwdriver and started stabbing Paul in the head. So he had blood coming out through his eyebrow and through his head. It was actually squirting. So they got out and got his gi that was holding his down, because the blood was coming out. Jeez. And then I'm sort of going, what the hell's going on? What happened so quick? And then before I knew it, this other guy grabbed me and put up against the wall. And he was, I don't know, he was tall, maybe 6'5", but only about 90-something kilos. And I couldn't get off the wall. So I'm thinking, I can't get off the wall when he's trying to punch me. Eventually I got him over the handrail and bent his back over the handrail this year, and then flicked him off the bluestones off the handrail.
Wow.
And held him down there for ages. He was trying to get me, even trying to bite me, and I won't say what his breath smelled like, but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
His eyes were that big.
Wow.
Anyway, so when the police came, they said, okay, let him up. And there was a lady in a police uniform. She goes, let him up. And I go, I don't think I'm going to let him up. And she goes, let him up, just get him, let him up. And I go, okay, so I let him up, and he starts throwing these cops around everywhere. They tried to get him in the back of the van. He's just gone like this on the back doors like this here. And they're falling over, and their hat's coming off and slipping over. And so jiu-jitsu was worked. But they said, yeah, he's super strong because he's iced up to the eyeballs.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, so
there's the power of jiu-jitsu. You're able to hold someone down who two cops couldn't handle.
Yeah.
Well, it must have been high.
What's that, Kim?
It must have been high to do it outside a jiu-jitsu academy. So the car was parked there outside a jiu-jitsu school.
I was wearing bombs on the bluestone. I had my keys and my stuff, so it was a bit messy. But I spun his arm around 360 degrees, and he just looked at me and didn't even care. And then when I told the cop goes, yeah, that he wouldn't feel anything, but tomorrow he'll be really sore.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad I asked that question, and I'm kind of regretting it. But what a story. That's full on, and thank you for sharing it. It's like, that's not a fun incident, but that is the power of jiu-jitsu, I guess. It is amazing for immobilizing people in a situation, and yeah,
amazing restraining. that guy, you could punch him in the head as much as you want, and all you're going to do is get massive infections in your hand, and he'd probably laugh.
Yeah.
I can't see the point in actually trying to hit him and punch him.
No.
It's good for that.
Yeah, good
So
stuff.
self-defense, we don't train a lot of self-defense as per se, but I believe that self-defense comes naturally after training jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So Anton, you probably have a great self-defense now, compared to what you had before you started jiu-jitsu, I'm sure.
100%. I feel very confident I could handle myself. In fact, I think that gives me even more confidence to talk my way out of any situation. But, I haven't dealt with someone trying to rob my car yet, so we'll see what happens in that situation.
Yeah, well, we're getting close to being out of time, I think, aren't we? So I don't know if you have any final parting words of wisdom that you wanted to share, Pete, with our listeners. We're honoured to have you on. It's taken us a while, but we finally got you.
Yeah, it's good. I think basically to someone starting out jiu-jitsu and someone who's been doing it for a little while, just keep an open mind on what can happen in techniques. And what I always try and do is always try and improve the techniques I know and develop new techniques as well. And that's why I've remained so interested, because I'm not going over the same old stuff. I'm always trying to do something new and different. So it's exciting and learning for me to do that. So you can just look at people training and you can think, we should do more work here because there's angles that are not creating. So it's very interesting rather than going through the textbook drills. So that'd be my advice.
Brilliant. Yeah.
But do you think that things might come back? You were saying earlier things will come back around again. Like, for instance, closed guard was very fashionable, however, X number of years ago. Do you think that'll come back around again? Or like you mentioned about the inverted guard and things like that?
From memory, Jamil Taylor in 19 in the featherweight worlds, I think he won 1 or 2 fights with closed guard. So, and that's featherweight. So they're the guys who would predominantly for the 5 years early would say closed guard doesn't exist for them. And Max has got an extraordinarily good closed guard, and it's a weapon that you can actually pull out when you can get it. Sometimes you can't get it, but if you can get it and you have a good one, like if Max gets closed guard, it's pretty close to the end of the fight. He can't always get it, but if he does get it, he knows that's there. So it's a good thing to have in the tank just in case you can use it. He's been to, like, when he went to trained in Miami for a little while, and then he was at Henzo's, and what he found was that a lot of people have a lot of struggles in his closed guard. So that would mean to me that he's not really spending a lot of time teaching how closed guard works. So these people might be difficult to get into closed guard, but if you do, they just panic. So there's a place for everything.
I think the same would be said of your closed guard too, Pete. I do believe Max has a very similar style to yours with his closed guard.
Yeah, I think Max is probably better closed guard than mine. I think he's pretty much modelled on me a little bit, but also off Hodges. So he's got a very similar, if you look at Hodges' setup with the chokes and the arm locks and triangles from closed guard, it's very similar to Max's, but just a much bigger unit. But and Hodges is a good one to look at because his closed guard is just like phenomenal. And he said something interesting to me as well. He said this guy came up to him at a seminar and said, Hodger, I have to tell you, I love your game. It's so simple. And Hodger said, yep, you mean efficient?
Yeah.
I go, efficient. Because it kind of is simple, but it's not a simpleton's game. It's like it's so efficient in the smaller details that it doesn't seem like much is happening. But if you go in his closed guard, you just want to get out of there as soon as you can, just tap it, get out of there.
That's perfect.
So,
yeah.
That's it.
That might be another name for your podcast, is like efficient, not simple, or efficient and simple. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You can see that Anton, they confused between simple and efficiency.
Absolutely.
Everything we want to be efficient.
One's offensive and one isn't.
That's it.
I don't know whether the guy's being offensive. I think he's just, but Hodge wanted to make sure that he knew that it was efficiency with the word he was looking for.
Absolutely. Oh man, it's been so good having you on the show. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this, Pete. We'll have this out probably next week or the week after. So if you could share it, that'd be awesome.
Okay. All right. Awesome, Kim.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Take
mate.
care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.